Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the Inn. I'm Eddie Phoenix, and with me is my good buddy Bulbazac.
Hi.
And today we're talking about nerfs. Now, the first thing you gotta definitively know about nerfs is, of course, it's nerf or nothing. And, they've got, different guns and styles. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, this is a different sort of topic and discussion. We're actually going with Hearthstone nerfs.
Yeah, the number one thing you need to know with Hearthstone nerfs is if you hate it, they should nerf it.
Kidding aside, mind you, Blizzard has, in the past, shown that they are willing to take a look at some of the cards in their card games and tweak them, or nerf them completely into the ground at points. So, really, what we're here to look at is we're looking at going forward. As far as the nerf goes, how it's going to be healthy or potentially not healthy for the game state. I know I have my opinion on this sort of discussion. However, I'm going to let my buddy Bulbazac here go first and let him get his discussion out of the way.
Yeah, this is something that I kind of wanted to talk about when we covered the last batch of nerfs in our previous video, but I just didn't feel we had enough time. So this is kind of like a follow-up, and just to talk about nerfs in general. I think Brian Kibler has said it best when he talks about nerfs in a way that that pretty much whenever a nerf hits, for the most part, a lot of times you're basically losing a card. Basically, it's not just changing. It's just not changing a card. It's basically this card that you love ceases to exist. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes it really doesn't have a big impact on the card. But a lot of times, the card that you know and love just ceases to exist. And this is a big issue. I don't think it was an issue, but it wasn't as big an issue, if you know what I mean, Eddie, when we did not have formats. Because, of course, Blizzard would need to change things for the game to stay considerably healthy. It's just the nature of competitive card games. Basically, you're either going to have to go down one or two routes. You're either going to have to consistently ban or change cards, a la Yu-Gi-Oh, to help try to keep things balanced, which is, let's just say, is not the fun route. Or you do like what Magic and countless other card games do, you develop formats. You develop a standard format and you develop a legacy format, or in Hearthstone's case, Wild. That's why... Oh yeah, continue on.
No, what I was going to say is, now don't get me wrong, there are times within the Magic Gathering community that there are emergency bans that do come out if something is way too busted in the modern setting.
Yeah, but there's a difference. Standard normally doesn't get a lot of bans. I mean, it has more bans than any of the others. And then they broke it down further. It used to be just Legacy. I think they developed another format called Modern now, and I don't want to get too much into Magic, which basically where it's a little bit more regulated, and they have more bans or limitations. But true Legacy, I think Legacy in general, which is basically anything goes, I think it only has one or two bans. It really is the Wild West. They don't do anything to Legacy because pretty much Legacy is just players wanting to play with their past collections. So, Wizards of the Coast, in that instance, they don't try to regulate that too much because they are really concerned about Modern, and they are especially concerned about Standard. And for Blizzard, that's why there's not a lot of regulation when it comes to Wild anymore, because Wild is essentially just that. People playing with whatever they want, and when you get the combos that happen there in Wild, it's Wild. Blizzard is not trying to regulate Wild. I don't think they have any interest in regulating it, because for the good of the game, it was best to create formats. Standard really was important for the health of the game, because basically there's no way Blizzard can continually modifying and nerfing cards for the entire lifespan of the game. And now that brings us to the last set of nerfs. I was not expecting it. And we talked about those nerfs in depth. Yeah, I think Blizzard made a good call on a lot of those nerfs, but basically, I think the call should have been made. The call should have been: should that have happened in the first place? Because my personal opinion And my view of the matter was, when they shifted over to Standard, they should have gotten all of the classic and basic changes done in one go. I think Blizzard was trying to be very conservative with the changes, but really, they need to be looking at those sets moving forward. And I even said that that was what they needed to do. So that basically all the changes they made then, they need to be the last changes moving forward. And we saw that wasn't the case because they just didn't do enough. And the problem being, and why I say that you should not be nerfing cards. It has to be an absolute emergency, and basically I have a problem now when you are nerfing cards going forward with the new standard format. It's because standard format is rotating for the exact same reason, to keep things balanced. You basically have done all your homework, and now you just let things run because you've done your homework. And that's why, it's not like Eddie that they just came up with the new set. They have these sets planned out for at least a year or two, which means they know everything that's going to be in standard when they're putting out the new expansion or the new adventure. So they should know how everything interacts. And that's why it was so important way back when they introduced standard that they got their acts together when it came to classic and basic packs. And a lot of people have been saying that the classic set is way unbalanced compared to the newer stuff. And they're kind of right. So it kind of falls to Blizzard to kind of keep that in mind when developing cards. And basically you either need to make the changes then or not at all. And yes, they made some very good changes. I appreciate that. But there were changes that should have been made back then. And if Blizzard continues to have nerfs on hand, and it's like, well, if we make a big boo-boo, we can always continuously nerf it, I don't think that's healthy for the game. Because that basically means that Blizzard is not doing its job in the card in the set building phase. That they have to continuously mess with the game. And what the problem with that, again, is as we move into Standard and Legacy, you are outright now losing cards. They no longer exist. And that is more of a problem now with the Standard format than it was before when we were like, well, okay, shrug. And I think we can all name, we might do that in a little bit, we can name cards that were lost permanently, where if they just weren't changed, they just are gone.
Oh, I can name a few just right now that I can use in my argument on all of this.
I mean, that's my roundabout thing, but basically my point, you get my point. Now with Standard, I think nerfs are just very unhealthy for the game because that should not be your backup plan for balance control. You need to basically be doing it when you are balancing the whole set, and you need to be checking all of these interactions. That's why you have Standard and Wild in the first place, so you don't have to check so many interactions, but at least check them out with interactions, not only in the set that's going out, or in the set that in the previous sets in Standard, but also with the classic and basic cards. These cards are always going to be there. If you're going to have an evergreen set, act like it.
I can definitively agree with you on the point of making sure that, yes, do the in-house testing. Make sure that if something turns out to be incredibly powerful, plan for it ahead of time. And just kind of go, okay, we need to take this into consideration for the nerf, and we need to do this for a nerf, and then just hit it at those points. Now, there have been some changes that have recently cropped up with, like, Ethereal Peddler, the Murlocs, and such. I'm thinking that's in prep for this next that's coming out.
Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say...
Yeah.
It's just coming out, and then I can stop there and let you have your point.
Yeah. My point is, I don't consider those nerfs. They basically just tweak the cards that they act the way that they were always supposed to act. In general, those cards really didn't change.
Yeah. You make a very fine point there as well. And then, to come back to it, like, when we originally had one of the big combos for Druid, which was the Force of Nature and Savage Roar combo, you took Force of Nature and just bent it over the table and didn't give it a warning when you were going to blow its brains out. they made it to where the card just no longer exists in standard or wild format, for that matter, because the card is not viable at all.
I'm going to interrupt you there. I think that, yeah, the old Force of Nature that existed, that card no longer exists. But I still think the new Force of Nature, it's a different card, it's a different effect entirely, but it's still a decent effect. I still think it's a decent card. It just doesn't have charge and they just don't die.
But here's the thing, too. Like, if you wanted to, you could have made it to where that card still had the charge, but you couldn't attack the hero. You could have made it an effective board clear card.
Yeah, well, I'm going to get into this because this is something we talked about last time. I don't want to talk about specifics and specific nerfs. But to be fair, the change that they made to Charge and Warrior, that's a solution. It's a very clunky solution. I don't think that they need to make those changes all the time. Because I think even from I'm just imagining even from a programming perspective, that has to be a very clunky solution.
It definitively probably is.
So I think it's just way easier to just create 3 2/2 treants than 3 2/2 treants with charge that can only attack that can't attack the hero and then die. I think it's just easier to do one over the other. And to be fair, for those looking for board control, Force of the Wild is it Force of Nature?
That was the card.
Yeah, Force of Nature is the new Force of Nature is essentially going to give you that. But we probably shouldn't spend too much time just talking about the specifics about which card is good or which card is bad and why.
That I can understand, and it's just kind of like just to scoot back to with the argument in hand. When it comes down to it, you have a small testing ground within the studio, I can bet, that will play these cards and play this game constantly to be like, okay, let me see most, if not all, the possible outcomes. And then when it comes time for meetings, they probably sit around a table and go, okay, here's this, and okay, here may be a problem that arises. You can take those meetings, you can take those discussions in it, and you can go, okay, we'll take this into consideration, we'll go back to the drawing board and just do this with it. And they've probably done that quite a bit with a lot of not only the expansions, but also the adventures.
Mm-hmm.
I think the big problem being is that when there's something that comes out that is completely and just incredibly powerful, or rises to an incredible power, there needs to be an action that comes forth that handles it and deals with it in a timely manner, rather than waiting 3, 6, 9 months or more down the road to when the masses are basically banging on the walls and screaming in your face going, fix this!
And here's my thing. It's just something that occurred to me, and I don't know, because I don't know exactly who works at Blizzard, but do they not have any actual players who understand anything about, I want to say, deck building theory or CCG theory? Basically, not only do they understand the game theory that goes behind certain cards and how they can go in the deck, but basically these are the type of players that are going to be the ones to discover them. What do they have any of those guys on their payroll? Like anybody like we're talking about like Kibler level here. Basically, these are the guys who just discover these combos and know, all right, we'll look at these cards and say, hey guys, they're going to do this with it.
Now, here's the thing, like, that part, I can't personally tell you. I'm pretty sure that they might have someone who can give them insight on it. Like, they can probably get someone like Brian Kilber to kind of sit down and be like, okay, here's this. And it'd basically just be a luncheon. Because, I mean, I've seen interactions between Ben Brode and Brian Kilber on Twitter from where they're like, okay, hey, let's do lunch and discuss things. And so, you can pick the brain of someone who is highly intelligent and can understand the mechanics and the breaking downs. However, you also have to think of them as a developer as well, thinking, okay, like, we can create this, and we can let this kind of go out in the wild. You can't always be fearful of what everybody's going to say, because that kills the creative process.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm just saying, when they have like somebody who would basically be able to just say, guys, guaranteed they're going to do this with it. That way, they're at least knowledgeable. Because I find it hard to believe that because it becomes hard to believe, especially like with Call of the Wild, that nobody looked at it when it was an 8 cost and say, you do know that they are going to be that they're going to be playing this and then hero powering, right? You do know that they're probably going to pack 2 of those in the deck. Or they look at Yogg-Saron and say, you do know that chances are, if it's more likely to be a solution that a lot of players, pro players especially, will be packing them in the deck just to basically be a hope and a prayer. You do know. And so it kind of surprises me, because this is a no duh to us when we go back and look when we go back and look at these cards, that nobody sat down and looked at it and considered that. Why didn't anybody consider that, consider that beforehand?
Now, here's the thing. They might have considered it. They might have honestly just looked at it and went, okay, yeah, that can happen, but let's see what it does, and just fling it out in the wild anyway. That could be a definitive thing. Just like I know when it came to another game that I follow, which of course Gears of War, they had 2 separate playlists. One for social setting, and one for ranked and competitive ratings. They had 2 different damage as far as weapons go for each setting. Social had its own style of doing damage from the guns and everything. Ranked had its own way of doing things. In less than a month's time of the game being released, the Coalition has decided to go in and go, okay, we're making one unification for everyone, and making it to where everything lays out and plays out the same across the board. I consider that to be someone who had decided to take the risk, see what it was doing, and went, okay, this isn't exactly working as we expected it to, so in a timely fashion, in a timely manner, we're going to fix this, and we're going to make it to where things can run smoothly or differently or better, in a sense, rather than let this keep going on and on and on, and letting our community keep squawking and squawking and squawking and saying, why haven't you done nothing about it, and just going, wee!
Except that's what the community always does. It will always do that. And we've talked about that.
Yes, it will. However, there are times when the community is right, and there are times when the community is wrong as well. So it's a double-edged sword in a sense, to where you have to, on one end, sometimes listen, and then the other times just go, yeah, okay, cool. And just kind of like treat them like the little kid at the table and just go, Bob, you're adorable.
Yeah, but let's look at it, because basically my point is, we're talking about the big interactions. We're not talking about interactions that they could not see coming, or that it didn't occur to them. We're talking about interactions that somebody should have picked up on in testing. And in that instance, I don't think let's throw out in the wild and see what happens and be of interest. I don't think that works, because we're not talking about Gears of War, having 2 different modes and then unifying them. We are talking about a video game being released broken, and then having to do multiple patches. Yep. Neither is healthy for the game. We come to accept it now with video games regularly, even though we probably shouldn't have. And this was all right in a sense, when Hearthstone just had one mode, and they had to continuously make tweaks. But that's no longer the case. They have at their disposal pretty much everything that's going to be in standard and that these cards are going to be interacting with. Don't tell me it never occurred to anyone that having a 40 spell Yogg would be bad or would be broken, or that having that players would interact and burst damage with Call of the Wild in a way that Blizzard did not expect. They had to expect that. So why release it in that state and not fix it before it comes out instead of having to make all these changes and continuously having to make changes or patches to cards? I get if a card was broken, like if it was glitched, Eddie, I get it. But we're talking about significantly changing cards so they don't exist in that state any longer.
That part I could completely understand and I could completely get. But, like, we've seen the way that Blizzard does things. So it's like, you take a look at Call of the Wild and you take a look at Yogg as you've put them out. And we've seen the explanation from Ben specifically saying that, Yogg was designed to be a fun card.
Oh, bullcrap. I called him out on it then, I'll call him out on it now. You do not create any card in the game without even considering that they're going to use it in competitive play. If you are doing that, you are not doing your job, Ben. You need to be fired.
Now, hang on. You're going a little drastic. I understand you're fired up and you're passionate. I get it. But, just draw it back just a little bit. Now, a lot of times a developer doesn't think to the competitive-only side of things. Because you also have to think about the people who are playing this game casually or also playing this game for fun. You can't just go competitive 1,000,000%. Trust. Because, then it just makes it for its one niche audience. And then you've got an issue of narrowing the pool of people who want to come in and play this game.
Well, basically my problem is, the whole thing, we didn't expect to be used competitively, or it's the whole mindset of, we create bad cards. And my whole mindset when it comes to competitive card games is basically that every card should be useful. Basically, if you're creating every card, you should have the mindset that somebody somewhere is going to use this card, and that's going to be useful. Which means, ergo, you are going to see it. So you should expect that sometimes. You should expect to see it at some point in a competitive match. I'm not talking about competitive only. I'm saying that, holy crap, we have to nerf this because we didn't want this to be competitive, is a piece of crap. If you created the card, of course you expected that somebody somewhere was going to use it competitively. What you did not expect was that some people were going to realize, hey, we could use it in this way. Instead of creating a card that's just good for everybody, whether you're playing casual or competitive, you're pretty much just saying it's okay to create bad cards, and that is a piece of crap. Every card should be useful somewhere. You should want people to want to use the cards. And it's that mindset. That's why I defended Purify so much, Eddie. Because of my belief that every card is useful in certain situations. Whether they're tech cards or whether you're building a deck around them. And just saying, well, we just create bad cards is stupid. If you're coming at a competitive card game or any sort of card game like that, with that mindset, you are doing it wrong. And this probably explains why you're nerfing cards so much, because you are not really thinking about the game organically. Which is why it's not healthy for the game.
Which is completely reasonable to say. So, at this point, we can look at this next set that could be, that's going to be coming out at BlizzCon this year. And we can look at it, we can go, okay, how is this going to futurely affect the game and the meta and the standard, everything going forward? Is it going to do this, or is it going to do that with it? So, if anything, I'm hoping that going forward, maybe after these boo-boos that have definitively came out and popped up, Blizzard has taken the time to sit down and go, okay, let's attempt to not make super boo-boos again, and let's start going forward with this more ideal in mind that these things could crop up and that they could happen. And we'll take it into account, we'll take it into consideration and make sure that we take it back to the drawing board as much as we can, and if it doesn't work, we'll potentially scrap it and then wait till maybe another set or something else to put this out in the wild.
Yeah.
Because, it's even been stated before, they had to change the mechanic of Warsong Commander, because Dreadsteed was supposed to be more of a neutral card, but they made it for the Warlock class because of the Warsong Commander, before being changed, having the original effect of any creature with 3 or less attack having charge. And so it's like, okay, hopefully they've learned going forward that every card's going to have a significant impact. And people will find those just completely off-the-wall combos and use them. Like, before Whispers of the Old Gods, we saw that Shaman was one of the worst classes. Now it's one of the top classes that people can't stand. So it's like, you've seen this flip effect in a sense, of just like, wait, how did this in Oh God kind of happen? So, if anything, I'm hoping going forward that with the new BlizzCon set, we can see Priest come out of that gutter that it finds itself in and start being at least a part of the meta, while also still giving other classes some healthy stuff to be able to make it to where everybody's got a shot. Now, is there always going to be a bottom tier, or at least a bottom class that is basically the butt of the joke? Yeah, there's going to be. But let's just try to hold optimism in the ideal that they've figured it out. Or it might take a little bit more time. Who knows? I'm not a big head mind at Blizzard, so I don't know. But given the chance to sit down with one of the big devs, I think being able to vocalize these sorts of things, or at least if they listen to the ramblings of people like myself, you, Brian Kibler, as well as people like Kriparian, Trump, and the like, maybe they can mesh something out. And that's what I've got. Throw in.
Well, my hope is that, I get it, this year is essentially the growing pains when it comes to Standard. And my hope is that Blizzard kind of gets their crap together, learn what works, what doesn't, to just make the format and the game the healthiest it can be, which means going forward, we really need to the nerfs need to be at a minimum, if not eliminated at all. You need to basically focus on the cards and the game itself doing the countering for you and doing the work for you. Maybe that is the problem with planning so many moves ahead. Or is that maybe you haven't put into consideration what the next set needs to do to balance out what previous sets have done, as well as keeping power creep from happening. I know that's a lot to take on, but maybe they need to consider doing that. Maybe they need to consider doing something different than just an evergreen set, having some sort of year-by-year rotating standard set. I don't know. The format's still new, and it was a good move for the health of the game. But our point is that continuous nerfs, just nerfing your problems away, is not the way to go. It's not the way to go for any game. It's definitely not the way to go for a competitive card game. And if I hope Blizzard realizes that, because realizing that and making sure that you design around with that philosophy in mind, means that your game's just going to be healthier overall in the future.
And on that note,
we would like to pay tribute to our fallen brethren. Goodbye, Undertaker. Goodbye, Warsong Commander. Goodbye, Hungry Buzzard. Goodbye, Leper Gnome. Goodbye. You can add new stuff.
Force of Nature. I would say Molten Giant. Actually, yeah, I can say Molten Giant at this point.
Keeper of the Grove. It was nice to know you.
Hey, I still play Keeper of the Grove, thank you very much. And it's still being played. Goodbye, Blade Fury. Goodbye, Big Game Hunter.
Goodbye, Iron Big Owl.
Goodbye, Ancient of Lore.
And goodbye, viewers. We will see you next time.